Like out of it is fueled by my life mantra, which is if you're not honoring your purpose, you're suffocating your soul. That's what drives my
Ooh.
every decision. So if you're not honoring your purpose, you're suffocating your soul. So this can
Well,
be applied in every area. I was taken through the tests, and one of them was what they call a biopsy. And I'm like, why are you doing a biopsy? Biopsy, I thought it's for cancer.
good morning, and thanks for joining me again on She with Ade the One. This morning, it is my wonderfully glorious pleasure to introduce you to a very dear friend of mine who was my very first coach and mentor when I started on this journey some 8-9 years ago now. I can't believe how the time has flown, but I am absolutely delighted to introduce to you Joanne Muturi. She is a life purpose and business coach dedicated to empowering women in corporate leadership to launch businesses that are purpose driven. She's had 13 years of experience previous to her coaching journey, where she worked with the United Nations Federal Credit Union in her home country, Kenya, and previous to that was involved in corporate banking. She finds her mission to be to guide women with confidence to leverage their strengths and build sustainable businesses that they love without compromising their high income careers or leadership influence. There's so much more to Joanne, but I'm going to leave you with that introduction because I'm going to let her tell you her story herself. An absolutely remarkable story when we come to it. So, without further ado, Joanne, welcome.
Oh, Ade, thank you so much for having me. I've been sitting and, mulling over this conversation that we're about to have. And as I listened to what you shared, I'm like, is she talking about me or is she talking about someone else? But yes, yeah, I mean, just going over the memories and all that you're reading just reminds me of how beautiful growth is, and that we are all evolving beings. The person I was 13 years ago and the person that I am today. It's just beautiful watching the metamorphosis. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Welcome. I'm going to just ask you very quickly my signature question, which is what are you grateful for this morning?
I think the biggest thing I'm grateful for, Ade, is a full circle moment. This for me is a full circle moment. When you spoke about it being 8 years ago, my heart just leapt
Mhm.
with joy. I mean, just thinking about how far we've come and the journey that we've been on, and now sitting on the other side, you interviewing me is just something that will be eternally grateful for. And just thanking you, not only for this opportunity, but for showing me what it means to really stick with the thing, really get into the flow of it. So yeah, I'm grateful for a full circle moment. So this is just beautiful to watch.
Bless you, my darling. You have been absolutely integral to my journey and to all my new beginnings, of which this podcast is one. So, it was absolutely intentional that you should be my first guest on my show, because if not for the journey that we had together in the beginning, this may not have happened.
Wow.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd like to ask you your journey transitioning from that corporate world and into coaching and empowering women. You know, uh, every month we have a theme. And being January, I chose this month's theme to be new beginnings. And so it must have been a hell of a new beginning to leave the comfort of your corporate world with an international organization for that matter and decide to go into coaching and empowering women. What thought process, what were the things that surrounded that decision, and you know, how did you get the boldness to actually do it? Now, that's a whole load of questions, I know, but I'm hoping that you will be able to circle those around and give me an answer.
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of perspective, I think I became an accidental coach because I didn't really walk into coaching knowing that coaching is a thing until I got into it and I stumbled upon it. So I've never used that word before, but when you asked the question, that's really what popped in my mind, that I wasn't intentionally looking to be a coach. It's not something that I was seeking out, but I think coaching sought me, and together we have fused so beautifully and created what I have, what I'm currently very much in love with. So, just to give a little bit of context, I was working with the United Nations for a federal credit union for 13 years. And just to bring in some academic qualifications here and there, went to school, did the bachelor's, went on, did the master's. I have a master's in finance and entrepreneurship. And everybody would ask me, you're employed, have always been. When I was in corporate, I was so corporate, like as corporate as they could come, like the black stilettos and the crisply ironed suits with a white shirt, and very corporate, very serious, and serious but very happy. I loved it. And people would ask me, but why would you be doing an MBA in entrepreneurship and you're not an entrepreneur? And I said, I just feel in my heart that I will be an entrepreneur, because even when I was in uni and in my corporate job, I was like sort of, I don't like the word hustling, but I was doing a few little businesses here and there, quite just on the side, nothing like more, let me call them passion projects that made some money. So it's always been a thing that is in me. And also they say that the community I'm originally from Kenya, the community I'm from are very, very industrious. So I feel that there's that blood of the tribe that I come from, quote unquote, flowing in my veins. And I also come from a deeply entrepreneurial home. My dad is a serial entrepreneur, has run multiple businesses. He's not retired. He's still doing his thing, seated on multiple boards as we speak. Same thing with my grandparents. My grandfathers were both extremely entrepreneurial, both interestingly were also in politics. So all that sort of gave me this ambition, this drive. But to get to the coaching, and you said leaving the job, the things that we do when we meet the one. I I met my husband when I was in my corporate job. He had come on holiday from the United Kingdom, and I sort of over a couple of years got to know him, and I got to sort of really have this long distance relationship with him. And it's a relationship that was, I couldn't say at the time that I knew it was not a time wasting relationship, but I was also aware that we're in two different continents, right? So that for me was very important, that if we were to progress beyond just dating and end up in a serious relationship, aka marriage, that commitment for me, I knew something's gotta give. And between us at the time, what made most sense was when we got married eventually, that I would be the one leaving Kenya, leaving the comforts of home, and joining my husband here in the United Kingdom.
Right, incredible. Was that what informed your decision then to leave the UN and go into coaching?
No, a little bit of context, and I would want us to talk about this a bit in a bit more depth, because I think this is very central to my story. When I was in the United Nations, just a couple, maybe a year or so before I passed, I attended my resignation. I started feeling poorly, and I was just not myself. I didn't understand what was happening. And one day I went to the gym, and it was evening after work. It was a very long day. Those of you who understand banking, we really do have stringent deadlines, and it's push, push, push. So I assumed that because of these responsibilities I have, and serving many clients in a day, and the grind of corporate life, especially as you're growing in your career, I thought that was it. That was what was causing me fatigue, because what I was feeling was lethargy, like burnout, like my body was just not itself. But I was also feeling extremely weak, and also hardly able to eat, which was something. And I had this excruciating abdominal pain that kept coming and going. And when I went to see a gastroenterologist, they said to me that, oh, we think it's IBS. So I was being given IBS medication. So IBS is irritable bowel. I was trying to remember the name, bowel syndrome. And obviously the medication that came with that, some of it was really good in terms of taking care of my symptoms. Okay. So I'm very, those people who know me, I'm very tolerant to many things. And I think one of the things I have is a deep um pain threshold, a very high threshold for pain. So what would be just excruciating for someone else, I somehow sucked it up. But I was in a lot of pain. So anyway, I go to the gym one evening, and I had a trainer who I'd met a couple of times, and a personal trainer. And he asked me to go on the mat and do some, like, sit-ups, and I couldn't get up. And he thought I was just being lazy. I was just not. And I'm like, I just cannot lift myself. And then he looked at me, and you can see someone who is not lying. And he's like, can I help you up? And as he was helping me up, I just felt like I was gonna literally collapse. So he took me to there's a lobby, and I put my feet up, and I told him, just give me a few minutes, I should be fine. I couldn't finish the session, and I'm like, I really need to go home. I had my car outside, and he's like, are you sure you can drive? I'm like, just get me some water and all that. Anyway, he gets me the water. I'm feeling a bit better, enter my car, and got home. I go to bed, and in the morning, I wake up and I could not lift my head. And how I knew something was absolutely wrong is my phone was literally just on my bedside table. But if I could hear it ringing, but it was ringing like it was in the living room. Does that make sense? Like it sounded really far away. And I tried to reach for the phone. And as I tried to reach for the phone, I think I hit it, and it fell on the floor. Anyway, I sort of like crawl on my belly and just put my hand down, and I get my phone. And this was time for me to go to work. And it was now my husband, Fred, he was calling, and he's like, I've tried calling you so many times. What's happening? And I'm like, what's the time? And I check, and it was like after 7, when I should literally be almost in the office. And I'm like, I can't get up. I don't know what's wrong. He's like, you have to find a way. You just have to. So I tried. And one thing I love, and I'm a woman of faith, and I'm going to just share a little about my faith. When you live alone and you're a woman, you latch the house in a different way. I don't know if you understand what I mean. I don't just use the one lock, like everything is locked. You know what I mean? And in Kenya, where I come from, most houses have like what we call burglar proof. I don't even think it was a walk. It was like little baby steps to the living room. And for some miraculous reason, I hadn't like done the upper latch. I just had the middle one and the burglar. And I opened the door, and I found the caretaker, and I'm like, good morning. And he's like, hey, Joanne. I said, hello. And I said to him, just watch, just be around for a few minutes. I'm not really feeling well as I decide what I'm going to do. And he says, okay, I'll just linger around. Anyway, I go and try to take a shower, which I did. It took me forever. And you wouldn't believe this. My only thing was, I need to get to work. I need to get to work. I need to get to work. It's about how we have been raised. The systems also put us in a position where you're like, if this is what I've committed to, especially in the corporate space, there's no room to joke around with that, if you understand. And I enter the car and I go to the office. I didn't make the day. By the middle of the day, I was in a state, and one of my colleagues had to take me to the hospital. What transpired from there is when I got to the hospital, they said that, oh, we're going to take you through the triage and do all these different little tests. I'm like, you don't understand. I really need to be seen urgently. And my phone rings again, and it was Fred. And he's like, where are you? I'm like, I'm at the hospital. And he's like, can I talk to the doctor? And he's like, can you give that doctor that phone? I think that's what saved my life, because he said to the gentleman, the way she's sounding, you need to do certain tests. And this doctor happened to be a trainee doctor. And he said, okay, fine. And he's like, but they are very expensive tests. And the question was, are you the one paying for them? And all I can say is that God is faithful, because I was taken through the tests, and one of them was what they call a biopsy. And I'm like, why are you doing a biopsy? I thought it's for cancer. And Fred said, I don't like the sound of how this is. You've been talking about this for a few weeks. You've been saying, and I've looked at you on the video. If you look like there's no color in you, like you just look like gray and not yourself. To cut a long story short, 5 days later, the results came, and they found that I had a massive tumor, 13 centimeter tumor in the tail of my pancreas, huge. And that's where my journey started. And the tumor was not benign, it was malignant, meaning it was a cancerous tumor. I didn't understand this terminology. I had never, I was not even 34 at the time, really young. And I'm like, what is this? Suffice it to say, I went through hell. Hell is an understatement. It came with everything that cancer comes with. And I'm talking about, I had to go through extreme surgery, which, number one, my oncologist thought was totally unnecessary, because the oncologist had made up their mind that I was on my deathbed. They gave me 6 months.
What is the prognosis for a person with pancreatic cancer such as you had?
So I was just about to say that the doctor, and I think they were trying to sort of make it light, but I understood the seriousness. I'm very switched on with these things, right? And remember, Fred is a doctor.
Yes.
It's usually about 1% survival rate for pancreatic cancer at the most, and they were very surprised that it came to a person of my demographic, because it's usually for much older men in their 70s. So this was like very strange as well. And then what she said to me, the oncologist, is that they don't think that I should have surgery, because in her head, she's like, just manage it, because at the most would be 6 months to live. And this year was my 10th year anniversary cancer free by the grace of God. And that's why, when we started this call, I said to you, I might give a little sermon net. And I think I just want to just hang on to that one, because I am a walking miracle. You asked me at the beginning for gratitude, right? But another thing I'm really grateful for is literally being a walking miracle. And every time I share this, I usually see myself outside of myself, if that makes sense. I'm like, how did that happen? God heals in many ways. You can do it instantaneously, whatever way. But I went through the fire to get healed. I had to go through extensive chemotherapy treatments. And the first thing is, every time I went for chemo, they would ask for my identification, because they're like, where's the patient? And I'm like, I'm the patient. They're like, what do you mean you're the patient? I would walk in with my makeup on point, my hair on point, my corporate clothes. Like, I was not letting this thing take me down. They got to know me, and they said they've never seen anything like that. I'm really grateful for one of my best mate, dear friend of mine called Miriam, because every time I went for the treatment, she took a day off work to go with me because she said to my parents she wouldn't want them to be to see that happening to me. And at the time she was like, let me just walk with you in this journey. And why not for her? I don't know how I would have made it. She would carry like all sorts of snacks. She would carry a music system, like 10 magazines, 10 books, like 100 pillows, like just really made it so comfortable for me. And I felt covered by God. I really felt protected. I felt like there was this shielding around me. It's so funny because every time I finished chemo, I didn't go home. Every time after my chemo session, I went to work. My colleagues did not know what I was going through. And let me tell you, when only my boss knew, and she's like, why are you coming to work? I'm like, I just can't. Not once did I throw up. Every treatment, because they would give me like anti-nausea tablets, and I'm like, Lord, I can't get sick in the office because a bit of TMI, but I'll share. I have a phobia for sick. I have a severe phobia for sick. So I never got sick, not even once. I got a lot of numbness in my, tingling in my, I don't know what you call fingertips. I have caused hair shedding. It's never, really come back the way I want it. But there are solutions for that, as you know. But I really feel that I had this hedge, this protective hedge. And I just knew during that period that like God was doing something new in me. Because even as I went to work after chemo sessions, there's a question that kept coming to my mind, like, is this it? Is this it? And it's important for me to share this. I was away for a couple of months post surgery. So it was surgery first. Then after the surgery, they needed to give me a cooling time, right? And during that cooling time, I came to the UK because I was getting so many guests, people coming in, just to check on me. So my dad and Fred had a chat, and he's like, I think you should come to the UK. And when we went to see the doctor said, I don't think you can go to the UK because you're still quite tender. And, I was bigger than I am right now. And he's like, there are layers and layers on layers that need to recover before I can have you jump on a flight. And I said to him, Doc, I just feel I should go. And I said, I think you should look at it. And he's like, no, but you just had the surgery, not even 2 weeks. And I said, just check it. And he opens it and he says the thing had like supernaturally closed. Wound looks like it's a 3-month-old wound. He couldn't believe it. How is this?
Okay, so the doctor found that your wound had completely healed itself?
Yeah, he's like, you're right. I have no reason to prevent you from traveling. So he gave me a like letter to say that you're good to travel, but there was a condition that I needed to wear compressions, socks, and there's a few injections I needed to have because when they did my surgery, they had to take out some organs, including my spleen, because the tumor was impinging on it. But what I would want to share about the tumor, again, another miracle, is that when they found the tumor, it was in a bubble, like a balloon. It was like in a sack, something he has never seen. So when he did the operation, it was literally taking out the balloon. But what did that mean? That it had it had no room to contaminate the surrounding organs, which was one of the things they were worried about, including the lymph nodes, etc., etc. He said he didn't want to take any chances, so he took out the spleen and just a few sections around that just to make sure bits and around that. And I had my UK visa ready, and that's why they say when you're ready, get ready. Because once he told me that you're ready to go, I was meant to travel before I got sick, so I had a pending ticket. I just called the ticket agent, and they said, tomorrow you can make your way to the United Kingdom. So God is a God of speed. So the trip that I was thinking I would take in 2 weeks, 3 weeks from then happened immediately the next day.
Wow.
And I came to the United Kingdom, and that was my first real experience I came in October, end of October going to November, and for me it was quite chilling because remember I had a bit of a raw wound still, And when I came here is when I recognized the seriousness of what I had gone through. Because, when you're surrounded by family, by friends, by doctors, this, the other, you don't even, there's a time, I could barely do a thing. So I had, nurses coming in to help me in there. So you're just my mind was just on getting better. I didn't have a time or a moment to really internalize what I had gone through. And I think that coming to the UK and being away from my family and everybody opened up something in me. And you remember I had said to you the statement about, is this it? So I just felt, I'm going to use this word very loosely, but it's what I felt. I just felt a sudden motivation by my mortality.
Yeah, I was going to come to that next. I mean, you've described a whole load of miracles, really, if you ask me. The fact that your tumor was encapsulated means obviously that it hadn't spread, which is incredible given the size of what you described. The fact that you were able to go to work through your chemo, which would knock a lesser individual out, and not actually be throwing up all over the place, that's a major miracle. And to think, through all of this, you managed to continue a relationship. And then, from what you're saying, to translocate from Kenya to the UK, where your story continues. So tell me, I mean, a 1% chance of surviving a year for pancreatic cancer is totally against the odds. And to think that you're here so many years after and looking well, I mean, that is an incredible testament to the goodness of God and to your purpose, because I do believe strongly that we wouldn't be here but for the fact that there's still things to be done. So surviving cancer, I would think, would change one's perspective and experience and shape one in ways that perhaps not having a life threatening experience wouldn't. So what changes came about for you having gone through that, and how did you take that through to your fresh start in the UK, if you like?
So it's not something that you prepare for. There's no preparation. You just find yourself in this situation. And this is where the true testament, I don't like that word, but yeah, the true testament of the person comes in. And I think a lot of what came through were the things I truly believe in, my values, which are already ingrained in me without knowing they're called values. I have gone through a lot of life stuff, and one of the things was losing my mom really young. So I grew up with a fighter spirit. I think anyone who you can imagine losing your mom at 3 years old and being primarily brought up by a man. My dad was one of those people. He's like, we are going to get through this. And he said, he kept repeating to me, Romans 8:28, that irrespective of what happens in your situation, it works out for your good. It's going to work out for your good. And I remember asking him, but what good is there in this? What good? And he's like, God asks us to, he says, you can reason with him. And I'm like, I don't want to reason with him. I was in this tantrum with God. And he said, one day, you will get the answers in your own way. And when I think about it, I feel that everything, Genesis 50:20 says that what the enemy intended to use for for evil turns out for my good. I think all these extreme things that had happened to me were sort of little building blocks towards my divine destiny, towards where God was leading me. So how did I adapt to it? How did I just went on with my life. I didn't do anything strategic. I don't know how to explain. Like, I just kept taking one step in front of the other. And I don't know if you understand, the audience. I don't know if you're getting this. I didn't sit down with a 10, 20 checklist that this is what I'm going to do to get better. I literally just woke up each day and took the step for that day. The only thing I can say is my mindset I have been a very positive person, but there's something that shifted. And I remember telling God, so I'd wake up every day and say, I will testify of the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And I still do that up to today. And I remember one day, and I said to my dad, you're so right. Because if I died and I was in a coffin, I wouldn't be in a position to testify of the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And people need to hear this story. And he's like, you never know. Your testimony could change people's lives. Little did I know I was being groomed for coaching. I didn't know what it was I had done. Okay, that's not true. I had done, of course, personal development programs in my corporate job, and I had done one really good one for my personal life. And I was watching the woman doing the thing, and I was like, "Yeah, this is something I would love to do. It looks good," but I never ever thought of it as like my main thing, if that makes sense. So, the time that I mentioned to you that I came to the UK, I was not coming to stay. I was coming to heal, to recover. So I got my first, I was here for 3 months, right? And I was on my own most of the time because Fred was going to work. So little did I know that God was sort of also helping me to sort of get a feel of life in the UK. In as much as, at the time we lived in Birmingham, in as much as I, wasn't driving or wasn't doing much. We lived right in the center of Birmingham, so I was able to sort of take walks and sort of familiarize myself with a few things here and there. But at that time, there was no indicator that I was going to move to the UK because I was not married to Fred. We were just dating, right? And that's why I'm very keen to say that God prepares us in his own special way. So how did I navigate the emotions, the thoughts? I just literally took it day by day. And I feel like I can almost emotional thinking about it because I said to God, let me never forget
Take
where
it
I
for
came from because I started to forget. Like people would, like someone, I was talking to someone and I was telling them about the cancer and they said, you don't look like you've gone through that. Then I'm like, it's true. I don't look like what I've been through, but also because at the time I was in so much trauma, I had asked God to completely make me forget what I went through, and He did. But I had to go back to Him and say, let me forget the pain and the trauma, but let me not forget where you've brought me from, because this is the data and this is the evidence of you being ever so present in my life.
you. Can I ask, so why did you and how did you transition into coaching?
After the treatment and everything, I got married in October of 2015. So next year it will be my 10th year of marriage. And, one of the decisions I made was to leave my corporate job, resign from my corporate job. And everybody thought that I was crazy, but I knew that I did not want to have a long distance marriage. Friends and family were very skeptical about that because in as much as, I was coming to this marriage, I was leaving my friends, my family, I was leaving everything that I knew. And the angel on this side was telling me that, you know what, on the other side of our comfort zone will come amazing big things. And now that you're married, it's important for you to be together and God has a good plan for you. So I made the big leap. That's the word I'm going to use, and came to the UK, resigned from my job, had some money that was paid out to me for my years of service. So a bit of some, I had some, not that much now when I think about it. And I come to the UK and I step into what I call my wilderness season. I came to this country in the dark of winter, deep dark winter, end of February going into March. It was so cold. So came to Birmingham Airport. This is now the second time round. But this was different. Two little suitcases, that's all I owned. And a new life that I was coming to. And I didn't know what this life held. And because my husband was, being a medic, he would go to work the whole day and I was left at home and I spent a lot of time watching daytime TV. Why I'm sharing this is because how I learned to integrate and get into British culture and understand some of the nuances, to just be a part of the culture was through those shows. Someone would have thought that it was a waste of time, but that's why I watched, got to understand, oh, Christmas, they have mulled wine and mince pies. I had just had a conversation with somebody and they said to me, oh, you haven't started flipping the burgers yet. I think that was the most triggering statement anyone has ever made to me. Flip, like, what, you haven't got, you're an immigrant, by now, when you go to these countries, you have to start from down
McDonald's.
there. Yeah. Like, you're not at, it was just a phone call, but it triggered me and I'm like, no, Lord, you've brought me this far and I have the evidence. And that's why I'm giving this story in as much color as I can, because I really want you to understand where I was coming from. And I think that's a place where I felt a deep, dark feeling engulf me for the first time, that what the heck, Joanne, are you doing with your life? And I'm like, no, that's not, it just didn't sit well with me. And I picked up my coat and I went out. And I said, and I was walking, I went back to that word that I will testify of the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. That was like my mantra. And I'm like, Lord, this doesn't sit well with me. So I'm ready now. I've watched enough TV. I've watched, I sort of know the lay of the land. That's not the direction I want to go. But I need a sign. Show me something. And I'm like, Lord, this is just too much. Why am I in this country? Like, what's this? I don't understand. And the first thing I see now, I know, is what is called a Facebook ad. And the person was a coach, and they were saying, are you feeling stagnant in life? Have you relocated or moved to a new country? Are you experiencing feelings of inadequacy? Are you undergoing imposters? And I'm like, what's imposter syndrome? I've never heard of that. And they used all these terminologies, but everything they said, I was like, yes, yes, yes. Remember, I'd asked God for a sign. And as I narrate this story, I'm just like, I've just literally seen the hand of God in everything in my life, to be honest. And as I said yes to the thing, I'm like, okay, now that you've asked me all these questions and I've said yes, how do I contact you? And I was scrolling really quickly. And it said at the bottom, click on this link to have a call with the said person, and we can give you information on how we could potentially work together. I'm very quick, I'm very decisive, and I booked the call. I asked God for a sign. He gave me a sign. I'm going to follow up on the sign. I had to walk really fast to get to my house in time to speak to the lady. Like any person who doesn't know anything, I just thought it's free. Nice, let's talk. Then she's like, oh, but it comes at a fee. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, how much? So in my head, I'm thinking like £20, £30, nothing. Yeah, 5 grand it was. Okay. And that was just for the basic, and the additional expenses. It was coming to about 6,000 something, which was literally the money that I had been paid. And when again, Imp said, you have nothing. If anything happened to you in this country, you'll be left with nothing. And this one said, what is, if this is the door? It's the door of infinite possibilities. And I think you can already tell my personality by now, right? I'm a risk taker generally. I'm such a risk taker. And I knew I had to make this decision. Did it sit well with some people? Absolutely not. But the thing with me is I had made up my mind, and when she sent me her bank account details, I sent the money. And the bank called me and said, have you instructed for this transaction? This is my Kenyan bank. And I said, yes, I have instructed. They said, do you understand that this will clean up your entire account? Is this a fraudulent transaction? Has anybody coerced you? Because it was a huge chunk of money, especially in local currency. But it just feels right. Authorize the transaction. He asked me again. I'm like, authorize the transaction. And the next thing I hear, a ping on my phone, and it showed me the money has left my account. And then he said to me, whatever decision you've made, I pray it is a good decision. And I said, let's see. I felt every hair on my head like stand up. There's no emotion, that any human emotion, that can describe what I felt. But I think the one that I can explain the most was I felt like I was gonna throw up for real. But I
That
just
was a
also,
real pivotal moment.
and also
Real.
very, but also a moment where I realized what it really means to take a leap of faith. I had never understood it like that until that moment. And, but the woman sent me a message and said to me, "Hello, your money has been received." She sent me a very nice email and said, "I would like to get you on my calendar as soon as possible." And that's where my coaching journey started at the audience. She coached me, and one day we were on a phone call and she was just sharing with me something random happening in her life. And I'm like, "I'm not going to tell you what to do, but in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would do blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "Oh my God, not even my coach gave me that answer. You are a natural." I feel you're a natural at this. Then I'm like, "So can you then teach me to become a coach?" Then she's like, "Yeah, it's a different program, but because you paid me in full, the clarity and the teaching you to be a coach, I'll just put it as the one thing." So I sort of got like two for one. And by the time I finished my program with her, it was 3 months later. I hadn't even finished the program fully. I made a decision that I was gonna run an event. And I said I was gonna start with Kenya, where because I was going home for Christmas, for the holidays. And I go to Kenya, and again, very important I share this. I'm scared. I had put it on Facebook, on Instagram. Well, Facebook, I didn't have Instagram at the time, I beg your pardon. And I had just started a WhatsApp, a Facebook group. And at the time, the Facebook group had started with me and my best mate, the one who, remember the one who used to take me for chemo?
Yeah.
And then I kept hearing the Lord saying to me, "Do not despise the days of humble beginnings. Do not despise the days of humble beginnings." And then one of my friend's husbands said to me, "I like what you've posted, but I don't really like how you've done it." He's a graphic designer and he's like, "Let me refine it for you." And he did it for me for free. And it was so beautiful. Anyway, I said I'm gonna have 10 women for my first event. I had 25 women in the
Wow.
room for my first event in Kenya. Some of them I knew, some I did not. And the ones who I did not know, I asked them, how did you come to hear about the event?" And they said to me, "The poster on Facebook." And then they said to me, "This is really, really good. We love this. It's so amazing. And what about our friends?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what about your friends?" They're like, "If you tell us the date and you book the date, you know me by now." They were having their coffee break, 10 minutes. I ran to the reception. I asked them, "Is there a room for the same room next Saturday?" They said, "Yes, it's actually free." I'm like, "Book it for 40 people."
Joanne, I mean, listening to you this far, there's certain things that I just want to bring home again.
Yeah.
Considering that this is our month of new beginnings and you telling your story, what I've sort of learnt from listening to you so far is, first of all, to know that you're not here by accident. And even in your life up till now, it's that all things are working towards a common goal for good, to bring you to that place where you're meant to be. That's the second thing. And then I think take your opportunities where you find them, because yes, you weren't expecting all manner of things. You weren't expecting, to me, clearly not expecting to get a cancer diagnosis for starters, but that projected you on a different pathway. Also meeting your husband who lived in England. I mean, what are the chances of you meeting somebody like Fred, who just happened to come on holiday, and it clicked. And then you didn't hesitate to follow what your heart told you, because it's very easy, at least in my experience. You hear something and then you think, nah, I didn't hear that right. And then you go listening to the other and you ignore it at your own, I don't like to use the word peril, but you miss out. It's only now, at least I can say in my life, that I've been so sensitively tuned to that higher consciousness and what I call Holy Spirit, for me being a Christian person, telling you very gently, do this. And you'll always have the chatter on the other side, which I call my monkey brain and my higher self, monkey brain, higher self.
Higher
So
self.
I I feel that, you've demonstrated so many principles here. You've thought, in your wilderness experience, you went through a time where you had to really self-examine. Why am I here? What is it to do next? And you actually asked a question, show me a sign. And you got a sign, but what fascinates me is the way you actually took the bull by the horns and just did all these steps. Move to the United Kingdom. Who does that? Uh, do the coaching. Disperse with $6,000. That makes me feel sick on your behalf.
Pounds.
Oh, sorry,
Pounds.
pounds, even worse, or better, if you, as you like, and go through the coaching and step by step how God has met you at each point of your journey, which is exactly what I would say about my journey. But that's a story for another day. I want to ask, many people feel paralyzed by the fear of the unknown when, you're starting over or doing something new. I mean, what advice would you give to someone standing at the edge of change, but having all this and not really being able to, or being
Yeah.
hesitant to take the next step?
One of the things that I did, and I'm going to talk a little about this, is I am a life purpose and business coach. But I realized that one of the fundamental things that people needed before they really uh, got to step into their purpose was really understand their identity. So I decided to start with a program, to launch a program which is now like the floor of my coaching, called the Identity Shift. Because for you to be able to make a transition or to make a decision, there has to be a flick in your mind where you seeing yourself staying in that situation versus the opportunities that could potentially come from you making up your mind. You have to weigh that, right? So the first thing that I would say to someone who is stagnant is, do you want to stay there? But I think it's that looking at the situation in the eye for what it is and imagining that if I stay in this situation for the next 6 months, the next 1 year, what could this potentially do to me? Number one, really being fully aware of what you'd want to do regarding that. Like, because there are situations where with my women, they tell me, I'm really stuck, I'm really stagnant, but I earn so much money. So I'm not ready to leave my corporate job because I make so much money. We're not just gonna do boom, you're exiting your job. We're gonna create what is called a transition plan, where I ease you slowly into entrepreneurship. This can be a year, this can be 2 years. Like one we've been easing in for 3 years. She just got a letter from her organization saying they don't need her services anymore. But in those 3 years, she had been dabbling with it a little, getting a few clients here and there. And when she got that resignation letter, she sent me the message, I am ready. Had I given her all the tools she needed? Absolutely. Did she need me? For moral support, because I'd given her all the tools. She had her email automations in place, she had her website in place, everything was in place. It was just time to now really do the thing. And I'm so pleased with that particular person because as we speak, she just sent me a message and said in November, I think she made about $3,500, for her first month in business. And I said, that's beautiful to watch. But in my language, you say, in Swahili, we say, do you understand? Chap, 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 chap means now, right? Or do I need to ease into it? And there is no wrong way, Ade. There is no wrong way. It's just to find what works for you. The second thing, and I think this should have been the first to be honest, is to speak to the Holy Spirit. And just like I said, I'm not walking out, going back into that house without an answer. Like you have to place a demand on your faith. And if you do not place a demand on your faith, borrow my faith. I think I've given you so many incidences of me taking risks that even if you don't know me and you've listened to this story, I pray that even just a morsel, just a drop of my faith can penetrate into your system. But just ask the Holy Spirit and be like, you know what? Give me divine heavenly strategies for how I need to overcome this state of stuckness and stagnancy. Give me divine helpers. There's people that are assigned to help me through this, and give me the wisdom to make the right decision. When I signed up with that coach, it was a fluke. I'll tell you, it was a fluke. I didn't know this person. I never interacted with them. Didn't know their belief system. But when I say I was covered, and I keep saying this, I was, because my first experience of coaching, I talk to people, they come to me and they tell me that they've had 10, 12 coaches and they don't believe in the industry, that it doesn't work. I was very fortunate that I stumbled onto the first person. So again, ask the Holy Spirit to guide you with that decision. And then the last thing is talk to me. Talk to Ade. Yeah. Talk to Ade. Find someone, honestly, who is impartial. And when I say this, I say it with all the love in the world, especially, for my, not even black, all sorts of people. It doesn't matter, red, green, yellow, orange. We are very quick to seek validation from other people. Should I not? And we end up going to the wrong people, asking them the questions that will just breed on our insecurities. And we go to the person, say, oh, should I quit my job? And the first thing the person says, oh, you're also so that your children can starve to death. Do children eat grass? You're asking the wrong people. And what happens is a lot of us then pick on the insecurities of other people and we end up doing nothing. So be very careful who you go to for advice. Be very careful who's in your corner. Join others' membership community. Be in communities where the people are thinking like you. Or even if you're not thinking, you're not yet there, they can sort of help you think differently.
That's amazing. That's incredible advice. So I'm going to ask my final question. What one piece of advice would you give to a person that's practical, that they can actually, I mean, I know you've given me a couple of pointers already, but one practical thing that anybody standing on the edge of doing something new, be that in a relationship, career, in their personal life, or starting out on a different path, one thing that they can implement today, right now, and take away from our time together this morning?
The rebel in me will give too. And I think a lot of it is fueled by my life mantra, which is, if you're not honoring your purpose, you're suffocating your soul. That's what drives my
Ooh.
every decision. Everything in my
Say that
mind is
again.
it
If you're
on? If you're
honoring
not
your
honoring your purpose, you're suffocating your soul. So this
oh,
can be applied in every area. Applies my mantra can be plugged into any area of life. But I'm going to say this. The advice is very simple. Nothing changes if nothing changes.
ah.
Nothing changes if nothing changes. I had to take radical responsibility for every area of my life, including my own health. This past year has been one of the most difficult years of my life, but it doesn't determine the rest of my life. Apart from nothing changes if nothing changes, is don't let one obstacle, one detour, one thing not working in your life be the be all and end all of your life. You can change anything that you want to change if you have that open mind and you have the right support system. But above all, you have the Spirit of God. You're reading your word, you're seeking God, you're asking Him, what do I need to do? And then having the right tools. When I talk about tools, there's a university that we can all subscribe to for free called YouTube University. YouTube University and Spotify University, they all have very, very good classes that we can sign up for, even if you're not ready, to make, bigger investments. We have other universities, quote unquote, like the Open University, Udemy. So there is no excuse for anybody. You'll find courses that are free and courses that are £10, £15. You can afford that. Put the Burger King and the McDonald's, if you eat that. No judgment on anyone here. We don't judge, we listen. But your Costa coffees and your Starbucks for 3 days can buy you a program, right? So sign up for that. And then seek wise counsel. When whatever the word hits the fan, my immediate thing is not to cave into it. It's like, what do I need to do next? Let's get into solution mode. That's me. That's how I think. With the right counsel, having a good coach, having a good therapist, having a good support system, it will really help you to form such a good foundation for really stepping into the fullness of your purpose and moving from a life of stagnancy to a life of significance.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you so, so much. I've had a fantastic time speaking to you. I love your journey. I'm so grateful that you're here and that we're still friends after all this time together. Very quickly, how can people find you? I'll put all your links on the social media and at the bottom of my podcast, but just very quickly, how can they find you online?
Yeah, I think the easiest one, and thank you so much for this opportunity, would be to find me in two places. And the first one would be Facebook, just my name. And you're gonna pin it there. Joanne is Joanne. Second name is Muturi, Muturi. Why I emphasize the spelling of the Joanne is because some people go and look for Joan, but it's Joanne, Joanne. Muturi on Facebook. And you can also find me on Instagram. And my Instagram is at purpose_cultivator, because that's my calling to help you take the center stage of your life through living a life of purpose and potential. So, purpose_cultivator is my Instagram handle.
Absolutely fabulous. Well, thank you to the listeners. Thank you for joining me today and the wonderful Joanne Muturi. I hope to see you next time in a week on She with Ade the One, where we will be having a fantastic panel discussing new beginnings. For now, please drop a like, look on my YouTube channel, check into my Facebook and to Instagram. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful week.